KYRIE by Poul Anderson. The first 8 years of this story's life were spent solely in anthologies, originally in The Farthest Reaches in 1968, then in a French digest the next year, along with World's Best Science Fiction 1969. Italian and Dutch anthologies followed in 1970 and 1971 respectively, then 3 in 1975. Universe Ahead, Stories of the Future, then Explorers of Space, then Science Fiction Stories 51. Its first appearance in a collection of the author's stories was in 1976 with The Best of Poul Anderson. Many more anthologies and collections were to come, including Black Holes and Other Marvels in 1978, which was republished 5 times by 1981. Read by Darrell T. Smith II for my channel, Quasar Spectra. KYRIE. On a high peak in the lunar Carpathians stands a convent of St. Martha of Bethany. The walls are native rock. They lift dark and cragged as the mountainside itself into a sky that is always black. As you approach from North Pole, flitting low to keep the force screens along Route Plato between you and the meteoroidal rain, you see the cross, which surmounts the tower, stark athwart Earth's blue disk. No bells resound from there, not in airlessness. You may hear them inside at the canonical hours and throughout the crypts below where machines toil to maintain a semblance of terrestrial environment. If you linger a while, you will also hear them calling to Requiem Mass, for it has become a tradition that prayers be offered at St. Martha's for those who have perished in space, and they are more with every passing year. This is not the work of the sisters. They minister to the sick, the needy, the crippled, the insane, all whom space has broken and cast back. Luna is full of such exiles because they can no longer endure Earth's pull, or because it is feared they may be incubating a plague from some unknown planet, or because men are so busy with their frontiers that they have no time to spare for the failures. The sisters wear spacesuits as often as habits, are as likely to hold a medikit as a rosary. But they are granted some time for contemplation. At night, when for half a month the sun's glare has departed, the chapel is unshuttered and stars look down through the glazed dome to the candles. They do not wink, and their light is winter cold. One of the nuns in particular is there as often as may be, praying for her own dead. And the abbess sees to it that she can be present when the yearly mass that she endowed before she took her vows is sung. Requiem aeternam dona eis, Domine, et lux perpetua luceat eis. Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison. The supernova Sagittarii expedition comprised 50 human beings and a flame. It went the long way around from Earth orbit, stopping at Epsilon Lyrae to pick up its last member. Thence it approached its destination by stages. This is the paradox. Time and space are aspects of each other. The explosion was more than 100 years past when noted by men on Last Hope. They were part of a generations-long effort to fathom the civilization of creatures altogether unlike us. But one night they looked up and saw a light so brilliant it cast shadows. That wave front would reach Earth several centuries hence. By then it would be so tenuous that nothing but another bright point would appear in the sky. Meanwhile, though, a ship overleaping the space through which light must creep could track the great star's death across time. Suitably far off, instruments recorded what had been before the outburst, incandescence collapsing upon itself after the last nuclear fuel was burned out. A jump and they saw what happened a century ago. Convulsion, storm of quanta and neutrinos, a radiation equal to the massed 100 billion suns of this galaxy. It faded, leaving an emptiness in heaven, and the raven moved closer. 50 light years, 50 years, inward, she studied a shrinking fieriness in the midst of a fog which shone like lightning. 25 years later, the central globe had dwindled more. The nebula had expanded and dimmed, but because the distance was now so much less, everything seemed larger and brighter. The naked eye saw a dazzle too fierce to look straight at, making the constellations pale by contrast. Telescopes showed a blue-white spark in the heart of an opalescent cloud, delicately filamented at the edges. The raven made ready for her final jump to the immediate neighborhood of the supernova. Captain Theodore Seeley went on a last-minute inspection tour. The ship murmured around him, running at one gravity of acceleration to reach the desired intrinsic velocity. Power droned, regulators whickered, ventilation systems rustled. He felt the energies quiver in his bones, but metal surrounded him, blank and comfortless. Viewports gave on a dragon's horde of stars, the ghostly arch of the Milky Way. On vacuum, cosmic rays, cold, not far above absolute zero, distance beyond imagination to the nearest human hearth fire. He was about to take his people where none had ever been before, into conditions none was sure about, and that was a heavy burden on him. He found Eloise Wagner at her post, a cubbyhole with intercom connections directly to the command bridge. Music drew him, a triumphant serenity he did not recognize. Stopping in the doorway, he saw her seated with a small tape machine on the desk. "What's this?" he demanded. "Oh." The woman, he could not think of her as a girl, though she was barely out of her teens, started. I was waiting for the jump." "You were to wait at the alert." "What have I to do?" She answered less timidly than was her wont. "I mean, I'm not a crewman or a scientist." "You are in the crew, special communications technician." "With Lucifer, and he likes the music. He says we come closer to oneness with it than in anything else he knows about us." Seeley arched his brows. "Oneness?" A blush went up Eloise's thin cheeks. She stared at the deck and her hands twisted together. "Maybe that isn't the right word. Peace, harmony, unity, God? I sense what he means, but we haven't any word that fits." Well, you are supposed to keep him happy." The skipper regarded her with a return of the distaste he had tried to suppress. She was a decent sort, he supposed, in her gauche and inhibited way, but her looks... Scrawny, big-footed, big-nosed pop eyes, and stringy, dust-colored hair. And, to be sure, telepaths always made him uncomfortable. She said she could only read Lucifer's mind, but was that true? "No, don't think such things. Loneliness and otherness can come near breaking you out here, without adding suspicion of your fellows. If Eloise Wagner was really human, she must be some kind of mutant at the very least. Whoever could communicate thought to thought with a living vortex had to be." "What are you playing, anyhow?" Seeley asked. "Bach, the Third Brandenburg Concerto. Lucifer, he doesn't care for the modern stuff. I don't either." "You wouldn't," Seeley decided. Aloud, "Listen, we jump in half an hour. No telling what we'll emerge in. This is the first time anyone's been close to a recent supernova. We can only be certain of so much hard radiation that we'll be dead if the screen fields give way. Otherwise, we've nothing to go on except theory, and a collapsing stellar core is so unlike anything anywhere else in the universe that I'm skeptical about how good the theory is. We can't sit daydreaming. We have to prepare. Yes, sir. Whispering, her voice lost its usual harshness. He stared past her, past the ophidian eyes of meters and controls, as if he could penetrate the steel beyond and look straight into space. There, he knew, floated Lucifer. The image grew in him, a fireball 20 meters across, shimmering white, red, gold, royal blue, flames dancing like Medusa locks, cometary tail burning for 100 meters behind, a shiningness, a glory, a piece of hell. Not the least of what troubled him was the thought of that which paced his ship. He hugged scientific explanations to his breast, though they were little better than guesses. In the multiple star system of Epsilon Aurigae, in the gas and energy pervading the space around, things took place which no laboratory could imitate. Ball lightning on a planet was perhaps analogous, as the formation of simple organic compounds in a primordial ocean is analogous to the life which finally evolves. In Epsilon Aurigae, magnetohydrodynamics had done what chemistry did on Earth. Stable plasma vortices had appeared, had grown, had added complexity, until after millions of years they became something you must needs call an organism. It was a form of ions, nuclei, and force fields. It metabolized electrons, nucleons, X-rays. It maintained its configuration for a long lifetime. It reproduced. It thought. But what did it think? The few telepaths who could communicate with the Aurigians, who had first made humankind aware that the Aurigians existed, never explained clearly. They were a queer lot themselves. Wherefore Captain Seeley said, "I want you to pass this on to him." "Yes, sir." Eloise turned down the volume on her taper. Her eyes, unfocused. Through her ears went words, and her brain, how efficient a transducer was it, passed the meanings on out to him who loped alongside Raven on his own reaction drive. "Listen, Lucifer, you've heard this often before, I know, but I want to be positive you understand in full. Your psychology must be very foreign to ours. Why did you agree to come with us?" "I don't know. Technician Wagner said you were curious and adventurous. Is that the whole truth?" "No matter. In half an hour we jump. We'll come within 500 million kilometers of the supernova. That's where your work begins. You can go where we dare not. Observe what we can't. Tell us more than our instruments would ever hint at. But first we have to verify we can stay in orbit around the star. This concerns you too. Dead men can't transport you home again. So, in order to enclose you within the jump field without disrupting your body, we have to switch off the shield screens. We'll emerge in a lethal radiation zone. You must promptly retreat from the ship because we'll start the screen generator up 60 seconds after transit. Then you must investigate the vicinity. The hazards to look for," Seeley listed them. "Those are only what we can foresee. Perhaps we'll hit other garbage we haven't predicted. If anything seems like a menace, return at once. Warn us, and prepare for a jump back to here. Do you have that? Repeat." Words jerked from Eloise. They were a correct recital, but how much was she leaving out? "Very good." Seeley hesitated. "Proceed with your concert if you like, but break it off at 0-10 minutes and stand by." "Yes, sir." She didn't look at him. She didn't appear to be looking anywhere in particular. His footsteps clacked down the corridor and were lost. Why did he say the same things over? Asked Lucifer.
He's afraid,
Eloise said.
Of? I guess you don't know about fear, she said.
Can you show me? No, do not. I sense it is hurtful. You must not be hurt.
I can't be afraid anyway when your mind is holding mine.
Warmth filled her. Merriment was there, playing like little flames over the surface of father leading her by the hand when she was just a child, and they went out one summer's day to pick wildflowers, over strength and gentleness and Bach and God. Lucifer swept around the hull in an exuberant curve. Sparks danced in his wake. Think flowers again, please. She tried. They're like image, as nearly as a human brain could grasp, of fountains blossoming with gamma-ray colors in the middle of light, everywhere light. But so tiny, so brief a sweetness.
I don't understand how you can understand, she whispered.
You understand for me. I did not have that kind of thing to love before you came.
But you have so much else. I try to share it, but I'm not made to realize what a star is.
Nor I for planets. Yet ourselves may touch. Her cheeks burned anew. The thought rolled on, interweaving its counterpoint to the marching music. That is why I came. Do you know? For you. I am fire and air. I had not tasted the coolness of water, the patience of earth, until you showed me. You are moonlight on an ocean.
No, don't, she said. Please.
Puzzlement. Why not? Does joy hurt? Are you not used to it?
I guess that's right.
She flung her head back.
No, be damned if I'll feel sorry for myself.
Why should you? Have we not all reality to be in? And is it not full of suns and songs?
Yes, to you. Teach me.
If you, in turn, will teach me. The thought broke off. A contact remained, unspeaking, such as the imagined must often prevail among lovers. She glowered at Motilal Mazumdar's chocolate face, where the physicist stood in the doorway.
What do you want?
He was surprised.
Only to see if everything is well with you, Miss Wagner.
She bit her lip. He had tried harder than most aboard to be kind to her.
I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to bark at you. Nerves.
We are everyone on edge. He smiled.
Exciting though this venture is, it will be good to come home, correct?
Home, she thought. 4 walls of an apartment above a banging city street, books and television. She might present a paper at the next scientific meeting, but no one would invite her to the parties afterward. Am I that horrible? She wondered. I know I'm not anything to look at, but I try to be nice and interesting. Maybe I try too hard. You do not with me, Lucifer said.
You're different, she told him.
Mazumdar blinked.
Beg pardon? Nothing, she said in haste. I have wondered about an item, Mazumdar said in an effort at conversation. Presumably Lucifer will go quite near the supernova. Can you still maintain contact with him? The time dilation effect. Will that not change the frequency of his thoughts too much? What time dilation? She forced a chuckle. I'm no physicist, only a little librarian who turned out to have a wild talent.
You were not told?
Why, I assumed everybody was. An intense gravitational field affects time just as a high velocity does. Roughly speaking, processes take place more slowly than they do in clear space. That is why light from a massive star is somewhat reddened, and our supernova core retains almost 3 solar masses. Furthermore, it has acquired such a density that its attraction at the surface is incredibly high. Thus, by our clocks, it will take infinite time to shrink to the Schwarzschild radius, but an observer on the star itself would experience this whole shrinkage in a fairly short period. Schwarzschild radius? Be so good as to explain. Eloise realized that Lucifer had spoken through her. But if I can without mathematics, you see, this mass we are to study is so great and so concentrated that no force exceeds the gravitational. Nothing can counterbalance. Therefore, the process will continue until no energy can escape. The star will have vanished out of the universe. In fact, theoretically, the contraction will proceed to 0 volume. Of course, as I said, that will take forever as far as we're concerned. And the theory neglects quantum mechanical considerations which come into play toward the end. Those are still not very well understood. I hope from this expedition to acquire more knowledge. Mazundar shrugged. At any rate, Miss Wagner, I was wondering if the frequency shift involved would not prevent our friend from communicating with us when he is near the star. I doubt that. Still, Lucifer spoke. She was his instrument, and never had she known how good it was to be used by one who cared. Telepathy is not a wave phenomenon. Since it transmits instantaneously, it cannot be, nor does it appear limited by distance. Rather, it is a resonance. Being attuned, we too may well be able to continue thus across the entire breadth of the cosmos, and I am not aware of any material phenomenon which could interfere. I see. Mazundar gave her a long look. Thank you, he said uncomfortably. I must get to my own station. Good luck. He bustled off without stopping for an answer. Eloise didn't notice. Her mind was become a torch and a song. Lucifer, she cried aloud, is that true? I believe so. My entire people are telepaths. Hence we have more knowledge of such matters than yours do. Our experience leads us to think there is no limit. You can always be with me? You always will? If you so wish, I am gladdened. The comet body curveted and danced. The brain of fire laughed low. Yes, Eloise, I would like very much to remain with you. No one else has ever... Joy, joy, joy. They named you better than they knew, Lucifer, she wanted to say, and perhaps she did. They thought it was a joke. They thought by calling you after the devil they could make you safely small, like themselves. But Lucifer isn't the devil's real name. It means only light-bearer. One Latin prayer even addresses Christ as Lucifer. Forgive me, God. I can't help remembering that. Do you mind? He isn't Christian, but I think he doesn't need to be. I think he must never have felt sin. Lucifer, Lucifer. She sent the music soaring for as long as she was permitted. The ship jumped. In one shift of world line parameters, she crossed 25 light years to destruction. Each knew it in his own way, save for Eloise, who also lived it with Lucifer. She felt the shock and heard the outraged metal scream. She smelled the ozone and scorch and tumbled through the infinite falling that is weightlessness.
Dazed, she fumbled at the intercom. Words crackled through. "Unit blown. Back EMF surge. How should I know how to fix the blasted thing? Stand by, stand by." Overall hooted the emergency siren. Terror rose in her until she gripped the crucifix around her neck and the mind of Lucifer. Then she laughed in the pride of his might. He had whipped clear of the ship immediately on arrival. Now he floated in the same orbit. Everywhere around, the nebula filled with space with unrestful rainbows. To him, Raven was not the metal cylinder which human eyes would have seen, but a lambence, the shield screen reflecting a whole spectrum. Ahead lay the supernova core, tiny at this remove, but a light. A light. "Have no fears," he caressed her. "I comprehend. Turbulence is extensive. So soon after the detonation, we emerged in a region where the plasma is especially dense, unprotected for the moment before the Guardian field was reestablished. Your main generator outside the hole was short-circuited, but you are safe. You can make repairs, and I am in an ocean of energy. Never was I so alive. Come, swim these tides with me." Captain Seeley's voice yanked her back. "Wagner, tell that Aurigian to get busy. We've spotted a radiation source on an intercept orbit, and it may be too much for our screen." He specified coordinates. "What is it?" For the first time, Eloise felt alarm in Lucifer. He curved about and streaked from the ship. Presently his thought came to her, no less vivid. She lacked words for the terrible splendor she viewed with him, a 1,000,000-kilometer ball of ionized gas, where luminance blazed and electric discharges leaped, booming through the haze around the star's exposed heart. The thing could not have made any sound, for space here was still almost a vacuum by Earth's parochial standards, but she heard it thunder and felt the fury that spat from it. She said, for him, "A mass of expelled material. It must have lost radial velocity to friction and static gradients, been drawn into a cometary orbit, held together for a while by internal potentials, as if this sun were trying yet to bring planets to birth. It'll strike us before we're in shape to accelerate," Seeley said, "and overload our shield. If you know any prayers, use them." "Lucifer," she called, for she did not want to die when he must remain. "I think I can deflect it enough," he told her with a grimness she had not hitherto met in him. "My own fields, to mesh with its, and free energy to drink, and an unstable configuration. Yes, perhaps I can help you, but help me, Eloise. Fight by my side." His brightness moved toward the juggernaut shape. She felt how its chaotic electromagnetism clawed at his. She felt him tossed and torn. The pain was hers. He battled to keep his own cohesion, and the combat was hers. They locked together, Aurigian and gas cloud. The forces that shaped him grappled as arms might. He poured power from his core, hauling that vast, tenuous mass with him down the magnetic torrent which streamed from the sun. He gulped atoms and thrust them backward until the jets splashed across the heaven. She sat in her cubicle, lending him what will to live and prevail she could, and beat her fists bloody on the desk. The hours brawled past. In the end, she could scarcely catch the message that flickered out of his exhaustion. "Victory." "Yours," she wept. "Ours." Through instruments, men saw the luminous death pass them by. A cheer lifted. "Come back," Eloise begged. "I cannot. I am too spent. We are merged, the cloud and I, and are tumbling in toward the star." Like a hurt hand reaching forth to comfort her, "Do not be afraid for me. As we get closer, I will draw fresh strength from its glow, fresh substance from the nebula. I will need a while to spiral out against that pull, but how can I fail to come back to you, Eloise? Wait for me. Rest. Sleep." Her shipmates led her to sickbay. Lucifer sent her dreams of fire flowers and mirth and the suns that were his home. But she woke at last, screaming. The medic had to put her under heavy sedation. He had not really understood what it would mean to confront something so violent that space and time themselves were twisted thereby. His speed increased appallingly. That was in his own measure. From Raven, they saw him fall through several days. The properties of matter were changed. He could not push hard enough or fast enough to escape. Radiation, stripped nuclei, particles born and destroyed and born again, sleeted and shouted through him. His substance was peeled away, layer by layer. The supernova core was a white delirium before him. It shrank as he approached, ever smaller, denser, so brilliant that brilliance ceased to have meaning. Finally, the gravitational forces laid their full grip upon him. "Eloise!" he shrieked in the agony of his disintegration. "Oh, Eloise, help me!" The star swallowed him up. He was stretched infinitely long, compressed infinitely thin, and vanished with it from existence. The ship prowled the farther reaches. Much might yet be learned. Captain Seeley visited Eloise in sickbay. Physically, she was recovering. "I'd call him a man," he declared through the machine mumble, "except that's not praise enough. We weren't even his kin, and he died to save us." She regarded him from eyes more dry than seemed natural. He could just make out her answer. "He is a man. Doesn't he have an immortal soul, too?" "Well, yes, if you believe in souls, yes, I'd agree." She shook her head. "But why can't he go to his rest?" He glanced about for the medic and found they were alone in the narrow metal room. "What do you mean?" He made himself pat her hand. "I know he was a good friend of yours. Still, his must have been a merciful death. Quick, clean. I wouldn't mind going out like that." "For him? Yes, I suppose so. It has to be. But—" She could not continue. Suddenly she covered her ears. "Stop, please." Seeley made soothing noises and left. In the corridor he encountered Mazundar. "How is she?" the physicist asked. The captain scowled. "Not good. I hope she doesn't crack entirely before we can get her to a psychiatrist." "Why? What is wrong?" "She thinks she can hear him." Mazundar smote fist into palm. "I hoped otherwise," he breathed. Seeley braced himself and waited. "She does," Mazundar said. "Obviously she does." "But that's impossible. He's dead." "Remember the time dilation," Mazundar replied. "He fell from the sky and perished swiftly, yes, but in supernova time, not the same as ours.
To us, the final stellar collapse takes an infinite number of years, and telepathy has no distance limits. The physicist started walking fast away from that cabin. He will always be with her. You've been listening to pre-1990s speculative fiction readings with a highlight on science fiction by Darrell T. Smith II. Please consider clicking the donation link in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and your imagination.